I think that there is a lot of power in curating and containing and keeping a space wherein people can be and become things that they are meant to become, right? And we don't always know what that's for when we do it, but we can be there to curate and to be a catalyst. Yay! Hi, Gabriel. So yeah, like this is a story that I'm going to try and tell in a little bit of as with as little rambling as is practically possible, and with a little bit of a sense of clarity and history. But it is the story of how I came to be. And it is the story, I think, to some degree, of how Gabriel came to be and how some of the rest of us came to be the people that we are. And it is the story also of how this that we are doing right now came to exist, and the organization that sort of it is part of came to exist. And it is a story that is sort of 18 years old, but it is also several thousand years old, and that we are part of it from the beginning of that time. And so that's kind of where I want to start, right? Because back in the good old days, right, in the ancient like 8 days of nudity and paganism and blood and animals, and in the pre-classical days, lost to detailed history, right? Lupercalia in the deep winter of Februarius, right? On the Ides of February, right? In the time of the old Republic of Rome and before that, right? This was the time of fertility. It was a time of cleansing, right? It was a ritual and it was a sacred one, right? It was the time where, you know, we would rid ourselves of all of the things that we had gathered in the previous year, and we would make ourselves clean and whole and fresh again to go into a new time, right? And this ritual back in the old days, right? The Luperci, right? The celebrants of the feast of the Lupercal, right? In the name of the mother wolf. Usually young men draped in very little other than bloody goat skins wrapped around their waists, right? Carrying strips of raw flesh, right? Would go rampaging drunkenly through the streets, slapping nubile young women with their strips of goat flesh, and wishing them the blessings of fertility from the gods. And then often that very night, often in the streets or in semi-private little nooks around those streets, would ensure that fertility got a good start. And a pregnancy that began at the Feast of the Lupercal was considered a blessed one, right? And it was this time where we became animals, right? And we became closer to our animal history, and we became close to those base feelings of lust and of closeness and of need to be a part of our pack and running wild, and to let those things like run rampant through us, right? And so that happened for many thousands of years, you know, beyond counting, beyond history. The Feast of the Lupercalia is mentioned in Julius Caesar, right? Marcus Aurelius talks about it in Shakespeare, right? But it was known, it is in paintings. You will find these classical paintings of naked people whipping each other and running, screaming, drinking like maenads through the streets, right? That's the history, right? And in the 4th century, there was a pope named Gelasius. Some people feel particularly connected to Gelasius. Yeah, hi. 4th century Pope Gelasius said, look, we can't have this. We are good Christian folk now. Welcome to this new era. We don't run naked through the streets covered in blood and flesh and screaming. We don't have our orgies. We don't drink wine and fuck against buildings, right? We don't act like animals. We act like good Christian Roman folk now. And instead of having the Feast of Lupercalia, I'm gonna say that what we have is the Feast of Saint Valentine. It's very important that you all know that Saint Valentine is a saint and it is a holy day, and we need to abstain from this pagan revelry and instead celebrate good Christian things and go to church and worship and not at all get naked and bloody. And so the deeds of Saint Valentine, who are unknown to the mortals because I just made him up, said Saint Gelasius, are important for us to celebrate on this time that used to be the Feast of Lupercalia. And that's where the holiday of Saint Valentine's Day came from, ultimately. We look over the course of some centuries and we find that this idea of holy, chaste Christian festival gets blended with this feeling of orgy, Roman, pagan, like sex holiday. And we get the emergence of romantic love. We get a holiday about romance and about the celebration of the proper kinds of sexuality and the proper kinds of love that one can feel good and chaste about. And I have never liked this holiday. This holiday is an affront, and it is an attempt to reclaim something that was ours. And it is an attempt to take away from us something that we are, right? And so we get to our interaction with this holiday as you know, I a youth in my 20s, right? Who had never understood this thing that the straights call Valentine's Day, because if you are coupled, then you are now obligated to show signs of affection that do not count because you are obligated to do them. And if you are single, all the worse that you can't participate in this thing that you are supposed to be a part of, this performative heterosexuality that we did not fit in. And so 18 years ago, right? This is in 2003, right? I found myself in what was, from all outside perspectives, an apparently straight relationship with Gabriel here. And we did not understand the ways in which we were queer yet, but we desperately needed this to be a queer relationship. We needed to queer our sex as hard as we could because it was way, way too uncomfortable the way that we seemed to be a boyfriend and a girlfriend. And it did not make sense to us at all. And so in our desperation to have hot gay sex in what seemed to be a straight relationship, we were desperate to find ways to include strangeness and primalness and blood and lust and you know, something deeper, something less shallow and hallmark than this performative heterosexual holiday that we were thrust into. And at the time, Gabriel was living in this lovely sort of sprawling railway apartment in Inwood with two other friends of mine, of ours. And I was living here in this apartment with my grandmother. This is the apartment that my grandmother moved into in 1948. She lived here until she moved out to a nursing home in 2006. Where she eventually passed away shortly after. But this is the home that has been my ancestral home, right? I grew up here, really. I've lived here now most of my life. I was taking care of my grandmother at the time, right? And Gabriel and I, we talked about, like, what could we do? How could we bring people together? And somehow we had this idea, right? And the idea was this: we should celebrate Lupercalia. We should have an orgy in this apartment. And we're like, well, we've never had an orgy before and none of our friends are orgy friends. Well, a problem with the solution, because our friends were nerds. Our friends played games. And we said to each other, if we got all of our friends in one place and we had a game, and if by playing this game, you were encouraged to do saucy things, our friends would play this game to win and they would do saucy things. And in the process, something beautiful would happen. And we didn't know what that was, but we took photos of each other's butts and we put it in an email. And we sent that email out to all of our stupid, nerdy friends. And we said, come over to this apartment because we are going to celebrate the ancient holiday of Lupercalia in the dark beast of February. And we're going to get together and we're going to we're going to have our butts out and we're going to drink and we're going to be crazy and we're going to like be naked and stupid and loving, and we're gonna cuddle and we're gonna eat fruit off of each other's bellies, and we're gonna put too much of this cookie in our face, and we're gonna tie each other up, and we're gonna be weird and stupid, and we're gonna laugh at each other's privates, and we're gonna laugh with each other about privates, and we're gonna touch butts, right? And we're gonna put our fingers in each other, and we're gonna just be human and young and horny, and we're gonna hold each other and we're gonna cry and we're gonna play this game that we invented. And year one, we started off very pretentious with high ambitions. Our theme was Paradise Regained. I had read Milton not that long ago. I believed that we were gonna like create this ritual, and we made a game wherein the goal was to earn planar indulgences in each of the 7 sins, right? And you could earn gluttony cards by drinking too much out of this bottle, the gluttony bottle. We didn't tell you what was in the bottle, right? And you could earn pride cards by winning the costume contest, right? And you could win sloth cards by putting your hands on these 2 circles that we painted in the hallway and not moving for the next 20 minutes while other people moved past you on the hallway. And oh God, it was filthy. And it was green, I can tell you that. If you look at that clip of Data drinking the green thing, that's it. And we didn't know what was going to happen, right? But we just needed other people to be involved in our sexuality, and we needed to be performative in our own way, and we needed to create a space where we could do things we didn't know how to do in the world, right? Because we didn't know who we were yet, right? And we needed a space to figure that out. And something did happen that we couldn't have intended, because we built a little community, because suddenly this little group of some 20 people who had all been naked and crazy and rubbing up against each other and doing things that we didn't know we were allowed to do in the world.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, wait.
Oh. We went through the rest of our lives now having known that we could do that, right? And we had done it together, right? And the rest of the world seemed that much less scary because we had done this scary thing and we had this secret, right, that we could share. Cicero talks about the Elosinian Mysteries, right? A much older ritual, right, which we have touched on in Lupercalia. But he says, you know, you go to the rituals so that you can live with more peace, and then you can die, you know, feeling safer, right? That somehow, having done this thing, you can go around the rest of your life and feel more powered and feel more connected, and to know that the world has a little bit less that it can do to hurt you, right? And so, yeah, it was demanded that we have this again, that we couldn't possibly not do it again, right? And so we did it a second year in that same railway apartment up in Inwood, and we made it a Catholic girls' school theme, right? And we had undercover nuns who were going to catch you for exchanging notes, and you had to like get all of the notes to pass class, and there were punishments, and there were paddles, and there were people like sneaking off into back rooms in order to have sex, and it was beautiful and it was stupid, and we made a big pile of topless people lying in the bed together. And yeah, it had its momentum. All right. The third year, we didn't have that apartment to use anymore. And we went to Gabriel's apartment out in Brooklyn at the time, right? Just a little small 2-room place. And it was a casino theme, right? Whatever happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. So we made up a bunch of tasks that would allow you to like earn money that you could buy garbage little casino themed shit that we acquired. I happen to have, so on this table in front of me, I have all of the artifacts of Lupercalia that are still in my possession, and the very oldest of them being these two poker chip keychains with little tags reading $10 each, that one could have acquired from the prize table at Lupercalia 3, right? So that was 2006, I guess I'm up to, right? And it was like weird and small. And I believe I smoked weed for the very first time in Richard's bedroom at that event. And someone went down on someone else up in the bunk bed, and it was a whole event that was talked about for many years. And I believe I raided Anthony's penis. Like good memories, weird stuff. Yeah, by the next year and every single year thereafter, we were here in this apartment because my grandmother had moved on, and I had this space, this ridiculous space, right? About 3,000 square feet of rent-controlled Upper West Side castle that like fell to me, though I did not deserve it, through the privilege of family and being white and whatever. And I could not think of anything better to do with this space than to turn it into the annual haven for our crazed, like weekend long, eventually, sex party adventures. And yeah, and I think it's here that like the event really started to sprawl outward, right? To become like the event that it became to be known as, right? And for a bunch of years there, it was a burlesque event. We do tasks that were saucy and suggestive, right? But eventually we had tasks that were just straight up sex. And I remember, I have the list of all of the themes in front of me, right? It was the 7th year, right, that we eventually introduced PG, R, and X-rated tasks that would be released over the course of the night, right? And it became a concept that held pretty strongly. And the first time we had real tasks that involved do a sex thing, and what resulted was a beautiful gay orgy. And we were so #blessed to have been there, right? To have engineered this thing that these people that would definitely not have been orgying otherwise were having this like beautiful orgy right in front of us. And like it, I've never felt more lucky than to get to be there to witness that, right? And like we had plenty of missteps, right? We figured stuff out. We tried different things. The year before, so that was year 7, was 1001 Nights of Lupercalia, Arabian Nights themed, right? We had to complete stories and go on missions and like genies and powers. Every year I'd build a website. We'd do a photo shoot to promote it. We'd start planning the theme in October for the February event, right? We started to have a Lupercalia council that would meet regularly, right? It became about half the year's worth like of thinking about and like what's going to happen next and what are we building up to? Like just speaking as a sidebar on some missteps, right? Year 6, I tried to do a LARP, a sexy LARP with story, right? And I did the most high production value bullshit you could possibly imagine, right? I gave every single person who was a guest at this event an individual character booklet, right? Which had their name in, and like they had special cards, they had powers, right? They had magic tasks they could do. I did thousands of hours of work, right? Here's your character write-up. I have dozens of these. It cost hundreds of dollars and took months of work. to do something that frankly kind of failed ultimately, because like a LARP where people also have sex is like an ambitious idea, but not like easily accomplished. Anyway, so we did prohibition. We did demiurges, where we were gods of 3 different pantheons. We had a Greco-Roman wrestling here in this room. You know, I was married in this room in 2006. My parents were married in this room years before. My grandparents were married in this room. But to me, the things I remember about this room is how many people have fucked under this table at Lupercalia, right? I remember the first time I saw a trans woman in the flesh having sex with Gabriel over on the floor over here, right? And it changed my fucking life, you know? And suddenly that was a thing that I could be, right? It took me more than a decade before having all these people have sex in front of me, I began to realize what kind of sex I wanted to have and what actually turned me on. And the things that I was told were supposed to turn me on never actually did. And suddenly I realized I wanted to be a different person, and I wanted to have other things available to me. And I never would have known that. Like, about 5 feet from here is the first time I really bottomed, and like someone put a strap on and fucked me until I screamed, and Anthony gave the play-by-play here, and I realized that was important, and I didn't know that was something I wanted, you know. I sucked a dick for the first time at Lupercalia, right? I everything that I did for the first time was at this party, and everything that I was came out of this party. And all of the people that we became came out of that. And so I guess, you know, that ultimately comes around to what is what is Utopia Rising, right? And Utopia Rising was, what if we could bring Lupercalia to other people, right? What if we could take this thing that we've been doing, and this spirit that we've felt, and this connection that we've had, and this magic that most people don't understand and never get to experience, and have this space where you can be someone and get to figure that out. And like, is it not our obligation to take what we've learned and give it to someone else, right? And so Utopia Rising, you know, just what, about 3 years ago now, right? 3 years ago, this past November, right? Me and a couple of other people, and we said, like, can we start running events that other people could be a part of? Could we take, like, what if we took all of this game bullshit, right? I have like 100 of the rites and rituals of the Feast of the Lupercal, right? Here's the outer mysteries of the cult of Isis, and, you know, glowingly praise a full moon, kiss it lightly on one cheek. For 18 years, I produced like games with hundreds of tasks, all of which were sexy, kinky prompts of one sort or another, right? For when we did the superhero theme, I have a whole box full, right, of superhero missions, right?
So, Robin, this is quite possibly the scariest thing I've ever said out loud. Could
I know. I got to bring it in for a landing now.
Yeah, I need to cut you off in a minute. Okay. Cool.
All right. So here's the ending, right? So we tried to bring it around and try to say, how can we bring this to other people, and how can we like bring other people along in that journey? And that's what Utopia Rising started to be, right? Utopia Carnival, which we built the Wheel of Lips here for, was our first attempt to take all of these games and nonsense and like run it in a space that wasn't our home, and for people who weren't like necessarily the people who had been part of that clique already, right? And all of this is because of that, I guess, right? And all of this is because of all of that. And this is the first year in 18 that we didn't really get to do that. And I felt real sad about it. But then other people also were sad with me. And last night we kind of had our own little quiet celebration. And, you know, this is a time that I've moved on from. And I'm not going to do that again, probably. And we'll probably never have Lupercalia here again. But all of the things that came out of that exist, and I'm glad they exist. And, you know, That's all. Like, I want you all to know, in as much as you share some part of that, that, you know, that's your legacy too, right?